Because, you know...
As the guitarist and songwriter for The Who, Pete Townshend emerged during the 60s as one of the guiding spirits of rock music. With his songs, anthems such as My Generation and Won't Get Fooled Again, he captured the mood and imagination of his generation. In his frequent interviews, he was virtually alone in seeking to analyse and define rock as an art form. And with projects such as Tommy and Quadrophenia, he extended the boundaries of what was possible within that form. Over the last 5 years, he's been through personal collapse from drug addiction, the breakup of The Who, and of his marriage. But now he's cured his heroin addiction, rebuilt his marriage, and developed new enthusiasms such as charity work and a job as an editor at the publishers Faber and Faber, and he has a video studio in West London. Next week, he's releasing a new album which will be accompanied by a 40-minute film and video called White City, after an estate in West London. It seeks, as always, both to address his current preoccupations and to find a new context for his music.
I need to reinvent my past. Partly it's because the past that I had, I think I might have missed. I look back and I don't remember what happened. So I can look back at the history of the area in which I grew up. I can look at the things that I've done as a performer. And from that, like Sherlock Holmes, I can try and put together the events that have led up to me arriving at where I've arrived today. Because what actually happened should not have led me here.
It's a boy, Mrs. Walker, it's a boy. I was born with a plastic spoon in my mouth. I'm a boy, but my mother won't admit it. I look all white, but my dad was black. But I know sometimes I must get out in the light. Gonna hit the road.
was 20 years old, I wrote a song, it became a hit, and from that moment on, I think I suddenly thought that the world revolved around me.
Dig what we all say. I'm a substitute for another guy. I look pretty tall, but my heels are high. Simple things you see are all complicated. Look pretty young, but I'm just backdated, yeah.
Pop music is crucial to today's art, and it's crucial that it should remain art, and it is crucial that it should progress as art.
Just because I get around, they do it all. I hope I die before I get old. I'm up in the table, he can't be my best. His song was leaving, and he just does the rest. Stop crazy little fingers, never seen him fall. That death from a black kid. Tommy, can you hear me? Feel me near you. Tommy, can you see me? Can I help to cheer you?
The Who went through a period of, I suppose, building up a manifesto in which rock with a capital R, would be possible of tremendous social and spiritual uplift, and possibly even societal change.
I'm here in the fields. I'm far from my meals. I get my back into my living. I don't need to fight to prove I'm right. I don't need to be
Where I feel sad is that proves now not to be the case. When one looks back, we ended up leaving behind a fairly kind of numb audience, I think, wondering where did the idealism go. That I regret now.
Don't cry, don't raise your eye. It's only teenage wasteland. Yeah, they're all wasted.
Keith's death gave me tremendous pause, and I wish it had given me pause a couple of years sooner. I think I played it down very much at the time, and I didn't really consider it deeply enough, I don't think. Deeply, deeply hurt by it. It was a warning, and I should have taken heed of it a bit earlier, because my own response really was to throw myself back into my work at a time when I was just as fragile as he was. And under greater pressure, I started to drink more and eventually started to use drugs again.
But it could cost more than your dignity. Give your blood,
What got me into heroin was as a result of an alcohol problem, which itself, I suppose, was just a result of drinking heavily for 20 years.
What sort of heavily?
Well, at the end, I was drinking about 2 bottles of brandy every day.
That's heavily.
Yeah. I felt that denied alcohol and denied the prescribed drugs which I'd used as a substitute for alcohol, which stopped working quite quickly. I needed something to tide me over until the point at which I had the strength to deal with whatever it was that had got me into that state of mind in the first place, which I think now, looking back, was a very simple thing. It was the fact that I couldn't bear to lose my family. And I'd been pretending for about 3 years that I could bear it, and that I couldn't. And I think I suddenly felt that I was an unfit father. And what I enjoy about now is that I know that I'm a very good father. And I think that's important to me, very important to me. What it relates back to is very much the course that I feel I might have missteered as a young man. In other words, that I perhaps was diverted in some way by becoming successful very young, and that blinded me to the very simple benefits and rewards of a lasting relationship with somebody. And I do miss that crazy, chaotic life. But obviously it didn't fit in at all gracefully with my growing family. It didn't fit in well. It didn't help my relationship with my wife. So to look back on those years, yeah, of course I miss it, but you know, there's a point at which I think you have to just admit that maybe you're a bit too old to prop up the bar till 4 in the morning. Can I have a drink, please? Well, weak tea with some honey in it.
You must have heard the cautionary tale, the dangers hidden on the cul-de-sac trail. But why the poker was beating through it all, and the betting name sprayed up on the wall.
We gotta judge the judge. We gotta find the fines. We gotta scheme the schemes. We gotta line the lines. We gotta stake the stakes. We gotta know the known. We gotta take the takes. We gotta show the shown. Try to place the place where we can face the place. Try to place the place where we can face the place. Face the place. Got to, yeah.
Okay.
Pete, let's talk about White City. Now, it's back to your roots. What inspired you to write about an area where you were brought up in London?
It wasn't so much because it was where I was brought up. I was brought up very near there. White City was a kind of a legendary place to me as a kid. I remember where I grew up. I remember the friends that I had when I was young. I remembered our shared aspirations and hopes and frustrations. What's very difficult is to actually demonstrate that to somebody that I meet in the pub and they say, oh, you know, you were lucky, you know, you got away. And my response is, no, I wasn't lucky. Because what happened was that I feel I was sent away. I never ever wanted to be set apart. I hoped that my success would happen and leave me rooted. In other words, that I could be successful but still remain part of the troop. And so my main drive now is almost like a search for roots. The first time I arrived on the estate, the first thing that struck me was that it was a symbol, really, of post-war Britain. It had obviously been established just prior to the war to accommodate the incredible wide variety of new British, Irish immigrants and Caribbean immigrants, and the indigenous population. In a way, I was searching for some kind of feeling of roots, I suppose. And I was writing a story called White City, which was about how England has changed since the war, and how I saw my childhood as being different from the childhood of contemporaries of mine that were perhaps about 10 or 15 years younger. And then I suddenly discovered that despite the fact that it was meant to be a symbol of New Britain, if you like, it still had the taint of the old empire. All the streets were named after places connected with the empire, like Bloemfontein Road, South Africa Fish Bar, Canada Way, Australia Road, South Africa Road. The word apartheid came into my mind, and I decided to use that word as a way of describing the estrangement of the two main characters in the story. They were being forced apart by rules and regulations that are sort of endemic in the way that they were expected to live in a place like this. A lot of single-parent families live on this estate. The important point is that wherever I was brought up, whatever happened to me, however I grew, I feel that that estate is closer to my idea of home than anywhere on earth. And I think that's quite strange. And it's not something I'm inventing. I'm actually responding to a solid feeling. What I'm trying to reinvent, if you like, is the line back. You know, why am I where I am today, and how has it happened, and why is it that I feel so deeply rooted in that kind of British microcosm? Why don't I feel like a musician's son, which is what I am? Why don't I feel like an upper middle-class kid, which is what I am? Why do I feel so rooted in that particular cosmopolitan mixture of immigrants and of travellers? And you know, it's strange. Why do I feel attracted to them? I think partly I became a traveller. I became an immigrant, you know, I became a transient, an itinerant through my work.
And an outsider to a certain extent.
Sorry?
And an outsider to a certain extent.
Yeah, an outsider.
Another way Pete Townshend has explored his past is by writing a book. Horse's Neck, published last May, is a collection of prose and verse, part autobiography, part fiction. And in it, he reviews his life and some of his formative relationships.
And what did I do? What a boring question. At first I did little except thunderous drumming. I hated his cynicism, was afraid of his keenness, his sharp perspicacity, his need to be a leader. And so I cooperated, became his adversary, distracted his suitors, conquered his conquests. Then I partly surrendered. I applauded his ability, enjoyed his laughter, as I used him as a straight man, decorated his inventions, tampered with his master plan, pretended he was invidious. And then I submitted, admitted I loved him, and dared to display this. What did I do? Only what any brother would have done. When I first heard that Pancho had died, all I could think of was that I'd survived. I had outlasted him. In a sense, I'd won. 3 years later, in my seedy hotel room in New York, I sat with Abel and we talked about the old days. I kept saying over and over again, I survived. Someone was knocking at the door. I'm afraid I've got some bad news. The Baron's dead. He died yesterday, fell down some stairs, got beaten up apparently. And I challenged him, seduced him from the bosom, drew him from the sycophants, fought off the leeches, recognized his greatness, flattered youth's ego, overrated his vitality, ignored his flatulence, resisted his attraction, listened to his babbling, acknowledged his genius, lived with his impudence, struggled with his naivety, compared him to no one, trained him to prosper, urged him to aspire, forced him to deliver, drove him to achievement, praised his independence. I was his mentor, I was his manager. What did I do for him? Only what any father would have done. The most disturbing line, I think, was the one in Keith's poem, where I write about how he used to use me as a straight man and how he used to build me up and knock me down and play games with me. But then, finally, in the poem, I think I say, but finally I admitted I loved him. And my problem, you see, was when, in the last year of Keith's life, when he used to ring me and just say to me over the phone, sober, It wasn't sentimental, it wasn't maudlin. You know, Pete, I'm just ringing to say that I love you. I couldn't reciprocate. I didn't know how to reciprocate. I didn't know how to demonstrate the kind of love that he was giving me back. Kit Lambert as well loved me and helped me and formed me, and my mother, of course. And so, in a sense, what's interesting is those three most important people, the people who've given me so much, are the three people that I've found, and even with my mother to this day, she's still alive. You know, Keith and Kit are dead now. I found it most difficult with those three people to return love, to love them. What did I do for him? I gave him life. I foresaw the danger. I prepared him. I hardened him. I nurtured his femininity. I praised his maleness. I deliberately failed him. I scorned his teammates. I judged his fellows. I was his conscience. I was his inquisitor. Gave him his freedom, encouraged his fantasies, sneered at his inadequacies. I lost him to another. But I produced him. I conceived him. I breastfed him first. I screamed with him first. I adored him first. I rejected him first. What did I do for him? Only what any mother would have done. As soon as I'd written a few things, a few pieces, I realized that I was actually achieving something which I couldn't do. The story...
Which you couldn't do in songs?
In songs,
yeah.
And couldn't do musically and couldn't do on a performance stage.
What were they exactly?
I don't really know. I think perhaps it was the bluntness, the lack of a celebratory setting, the lack of a precondition of the kind of, let's call it, pomposity of the rock musical setting. That when I wanted to be dry or cynical or simply just flat, I could be. It's very difficult to be flat if you're accompanied by, you know, a very, very solid rock drummer. A rhythm, it's the rhythm of rock which I think is its greatest limitation, and one which I think confines it most seriously as a vehicle for communicating deeply felt emotions. And in the book, I think I've managed to, whether or not I've managed to convey them, I've certainly dealt with much more deeply felt emotions than I ever have in writing a song. I've actually been in the vanguard for 25 years, really, particularly of the new form of British writing, which the Beatles began and which people like myself and Ray Davies and myriads of other writers since have developed and evolved. And you come up against a wall where the whole system seems to fall apart is very much in the presentation of the song. A song like Won't Get Fooled Again, which was a renunciation of the possibility of revolution in Britain, was sung with such passion and violence that it actually came to mean something quite different.
We'll be fighting in the streets with our children on our feet. Tomorrow, Sunday worship will be gone. And who spurred us on? Said judgment all wrong. They decide and the shotgun sings the song. I tip my hat to you, Constitution. Let them fight for the new revolution. Sign green and change all around. Pick up my guitar and play, just like yesterday. And I get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
The Who's fiery delivery of that song, Keith Moon's explosive playing and John Entwistle's thunderous bass guitaring turned it into something which was actually rather more of a revocation. We were revoking something rather than making a stance, which is what I felt I'd done in the song. Rock can only deal with subtleties by evolving, and as soon as it evolves, as soon as it changes, as soon as it departs from the limitations set down by Chuck Berry, it's not rock anymore. And when you get to the edge of that area, and you start to think, as I did on Chinese Eyes, I want to write about how much I miss my wife. And I'm a middle-aged man, and it's not an acute loss that I'm feeling, it's a very subtle loss. I miss the fact that we grew up together or something like that. How do I do it? And then you find that although it's possible to achieve it, it's not regarded as pure rock, and as such doesn't get on the radio. And then you've reached the edge.
Are you saying on that rock and roll can only do a limited number of things, and that in order to have a greater variety of response and expression, you have to go outside rock and roll?
Yes. And there is also an element of sour grapes about it. I feel I'm the one of the people who has been betrayed in a sense. I've not betrayed by a them, but betrayed in a sense by the collapse of one's own visions.
But you keep talking about rock as a limited form, and the rhythm is something that restricts it. But from your own work at Faber and Faber and your own writing, you know that limited forms are often a way through to variety of expression. They're often an aid to it.
Absolutely.
And yet you speak of the rhythm of rock and roll as a limited form in a condemnatory fashion.
No, I don't really. Not entirely. I mean, I've always felt that the actual four in a bar, the verse chorus limitation has been one of the great factors in the growth of the rock song into what it has actually become today.
Surely from your own work on Tommy, for instance, and from what John Lennon did on Imagine, say, they extended the Chuck Berry ideas inside a rock culture.
One does come down to niceties, because as I said, I think, Chuck Berry is irrefutably rock and roll from top to bottom. Elements of Tommy were rock. I don't think I don't think of it as a rock song. I think of it as a John Lennon song. I think of it as a song from John Lennon, the poet, if you like. It came from rock culture because Lennon came from rock culture. But I think it was a tremendous departure. In fact, Lennon, in the last 10 years of his life, arguably was struggling with the same dichotomies that I was struggling with, trying to find a way back, if you like, to the simplicity of the form, to the purity of the form, to the expression of something which was greater, because quantitatively greater, because you were speaking for and with a larger number of people, rather than making personal statements. In other words, much more up in the manifesto, much more level, much more up in the spiritual level, much more almost religious level.
And are you trying to do that now?
No, I've stopped doing that.
Don't you think that a lot of young people will think that you've betrayed them by saying that rock and roll can't do a lot of things?
No, I'm not betraying them at all. I'm doing them a great favour. The ageing rock performers like myself have become like Morris dancers. We're doing it again and again and again and again, but we've forgotten why.
But doesn't that invite the obvious question that therefore your views are because you're becoming ageing Morris dancers, and you're actually saying it's all over because I'm all over it?
Are young Morris dancers any better?
Well, wouldn't the previous public singers have said the same about the young Morris dancers 20 years ago? That still doesn't answer my question. The question is, you invited the question, does what you say mean that, in effect, what you're saying is because you've lost interest, then there is no longer interest in the thing itself?
No, I don't think so. No, because I still think that, the young, obviously, will always have dreams and visions and hopes and aspirations.
Having said all this about not going on and this, that and the other, you're now going back out playing with the band.
That, I did say that I miss some of the social side, and I think that that's, trying to withdraw slowly. Bit of afterglow going on.
Well, what you're actually saying is that there was this little era called rock and roll, 1955-6 to 1980. Now it's over, R.I.P. Finished.
Let's hope so. I think, I would hope it was well and truly over. The optimism for the future is in the combination of images, poetry or words and music. Yeah, all my old bits and pieces getting scattered really everywhere. Not everything that has passed through my hands has ended up in here, but there's a fair amount of stuff. Because I've had studios at home since I was about 20, 21, and some of the odd things have actually lasted right through that whole time. This is quite interesting, this box here. I don't know how I managed without these now. Maybe we've got something slightly more sophisticated. But when I first built my studio at home, I found that I had incredible amounts of problems with, like the washing machine clicking on and off, or the telephone ringing, or somebody switching on and off a light, or the bloke's minicab radio and stuff like that. And I rang round, and apparently what I required was a radio frequency interference filter. And you pass the mains through it, and it solved all those problems. Not something that you immediately think about when you know, when you're setting up a little studio at home. You think, well, I'll just plug the gear in and away I'll go. But you've got to have one of these radio interference filter. Belling-Lee. They also make ovens, I think. The first machines that I started to use for composition were suggested to me by our manager, Kit Lambert. This is when the group first started, in 1964. And it was he who suggested to me that I might use high-quality field recorders used in the film industry, which is where he came from. They were made by a company called Vortexian. And he explained to me that on certain machines I could bounce from track to track, and each time I bounced, each time I made a copy, I could add things, and so it would give me a good idea of how a record was going to sound.
So sad about us. So sad about us. But never meant to break up, but now we'll never make a bed.
The atmosphere of that kind of recording was enough, really, to get across the song to the other guys in the band.
Apologies mean nothing when the damage is done. But you can't switch off your loving like you can't switch off the sun.
I write on tape, usually. Usually have a few ideas on a piece of paper, a few ideas musically. And I would normally work in a layer of tracks, just maybe a guitar to start with against a drum box, like. And now I've got one track left, over which I shall swear at you. I just wish all this stuff had been around when I had my first studio.
After the
the fire still burns, the heart grows older, and never ever learns. The memory's smaller, the soul always yearns after the fire still burns. I was a very loud complainer as a young man, very accusatory, very dismissive of politicians, of social workers, of any kind of philanthropic or altruistic individuals, discursive of artists, of the media, and as such suddenly finding that I was at a position in my life when I was very much a part of that establishment. Then I had to really take the responsibility. And there was a kind of element of hypocrisy there, a very uneasy transition. I'm sure it's the same for everybody. But when you've done that in public, when you've said that in public, when your youthful and impetuous comments have been preserved on paper and in books and thrown back at you again and again and again, you know, you hoped you died before you get old. What happened to that? I'm sucking on my videotape. It's a strange feeling. I'm crying and I'm joking. I've gotta stop thinking. I've gotta stop drinking. I've gotta stop smoking. 'Cause after the fire still burns. The heart grows older, but never learns. Hello, it's Pete Townshend speaking. I got your letter of the 1st. I'm sorry it's taken so long to get back.
Hello, this is Nicola from Pete Townshend's office.
But there again, if you know, I mean, I don't know whether I'll manage to get the album finished in the 3 weeks I've got left. But if I do, it will just be the same. Like now, I know I probably work too hard, but that's my current addiction, if you like, is work. If it wasn't work, it would probably be something else.
Today, Pete Townshend has a far firmer grip on his own activities than ever before, and they're more diverse.
I spent the money on the film, so embarrassing.
He manages his own solo career, as well as running 2 recording studios and a video studio, employing a staff of 20 people.
Bye.
2 years ago, he became an editor at the publishers Faber and Faber.
And just lit 1 hour from the Faber Sales Conference. And Meg would certainly like to come. And Desmond's very happy.
Good.
And somehow
We're the current Townshend, it's Chiswick Family Rescue.
I suppose a lot of people don't realise that behind the 4 people in a rock band are about 30 others, and they all have specific functions. I do feel that, you know, having had the protection of a group, because it is a protection, I've surrounded myself with an alternative group.
Can you now?
However, most of Townshend's work and his more recent stage appearances are for charity. He runs his own charity, the 00, which helps drug addicts and also channels money to 70 other charities.
Oh, good. Thank you. Now,
I give a large proportion of my income away through my own charity. I exercise a certain amount of personal discretion and favour as to where that money goes. I also fundraise on behalf of other charities, on behalf of Chiswick Family Rescue, for example, which is a battered wives refuge, on behalf of the Prince's Trust, which helps young people in general.
That they will fund a wing at the clinic when we get it going forever, and hopefully some cash as well, but I don't know about that.
right in here.
I am in the front line now of the establishment, and I think that people that are in the front line of the establishment have to demonstrate that the establishment itself, for all its faults, is aware of what is wrong with society, and in many cases aware of the futility of trying to put the wrongs right, but nonetheless they are actively involved in efforts to encounter difficulties.
Despite his claim that the crusading spirit of rock music has been frustrated, Townshend himself has played a significant part in rock's current leaning towards philanthropy. One of the concerts he organised during the summer was with Dire Straits for Prince Charles's charity, the Prince's Trust. Earlier in the day, he'd rehearsed the songs for the first time.
It's very short.
I think it'd be all right. If anything I play sounds wrong, I'll stop.
That'd be great.
Here we go.
Yeah. Miss Meg.
I'd like to introduce Dr. Meg Pattison. Could you come up, Meg?
As an editor at Faber & Faber, Townshend helps to formulate their publishing policy, commissions new books, revises and edits manuscripts, and promotes his author's work on final publication.
Should be used to all this.
He's introduced several new writers to the public, and at a sales conference in September, he presented one of his latest books by Dr. Meg Pattison, who had treated his own drug addiction.
And first, I'd like to say it's great to see you all. You probably don't believe me, but it really is. I've been ensconced in a recording studio for the last 6 months, and it's nice to see some faces rather than tapes going round and round. We hope, sincerely, that Meg's book will consolidate the hope and the promise that her method, bioelectric medicine, promises. I mean, there's a promise in the book, that an optimistic promise that others, a wide range of individuals can benefit from the treatment which I benefited from and which many others have benefited from. And she treated my friend Eric Clapton. Is there anything you'd like to say about the book? The Fabers are interesting because they're such an august publishing house with such a fabulous poetry backlist. And yet even Fabers are changing. Even Fabers are realising that people that read books these days read books for very different reasons than they used to. They don't read books for entertainment. They read books to be challenged, to create debate, to be informed, to be inspired.
It's not electric shock. If I can describe it, it's like the electric chair is electricity. It's like 100 aspirins, it kills you. 50 aspirins is like shock therapy. It's near enough. This is like 2 aspirins that cures your headache. It's a minute amount of electricity.
So the kind of books that I look for are books which fill that role, like for people like me.
10 days of treatment. It's totally different from shock therapy.
Painless.
And there's the witness.
I've gotta stop drinking. I've gotta stop drinking. I've gotta
much, you think too much, you say too much. I always think, yeah, but nobody really knows who I am or what I am or what is really motivating me, because I don't. People often feel embarrassed by my openness, or alternatively, you know, that if I try and explain it or talk about the consequences of it or talk about the genesis of it, that in some way that I'm taking away their enjoyment of it. So in that sense, it is a terrible flaw. But for me as a human being, I feel the same need to share what I feel as I have the same drive to do that. I feel that to be as artistic a process as writing a song. It's just not set to music, you know. Well, what I'm working on now is this White City story. And it's about a man who, in his mind, has invented two new characters with whom he lives and through whom he experiences everything. One, I wanted quite simply to make a music piece, a musical teleplay. I wanted to allow a song cycle to evolve at the same rate as a story, at the same speed as a story, as the same rate as a film script, for all the elements to evolve together, rather than the normal musical form, which is that you write a song and then somebody makes a video film of it afterwards. One is an image, an idealized image of himself when he was a teenager. And the other is an idealized image of himself as he should be in late middle age, in his 40s in middle age. Both situations, fantasies, because as we see later in the story, he is actually confined to a wheelchair after a car crash, which has come about as a result of his moral collapse, his drinking, and his neglect of his family. And in the end, I chose a very simple story about two estranged lovers living on the White City estate, which for a variety of reasons seemed to be the perfect setting for all of the feelings that I had. I just felt that a child that was brought up in a pub would have had certain experiences which did relate to mine. In other words, a mother and father running a pub with a young kid would spend a hell of a lot of time fussing about their customers and perhaps not enough time fussing about their children. I definitely felt this in my early childhood about my parents, that my father was always away on the road entertaining people, of which I was very proud and felt very involved. But at the same time, you know, I sometimes wondered what's so important about them, you know. And so in that respect, Jim is similar, but not. I admire him in one way because he hasn't left. You see, he hasn't given up the ghost. I did. I gave up the ghost very early. Emotionally, I think I gave up the ghost when I was about 14. I thought, screw all this. I've got to get out. So Jim is dissimilar in that he stays.
Your famous friend in with you, I see. You could always try a bit of cleaning work around here, you know. Put a bit of money on your dough. Well, I'm only trying to help him.
My experience is pretty limited. You know, I've done a lot of the same thing. So when I come to, you know, get to grips with a story and make it fruity enough and real enough to speak truthfully, and loudly, I have to stick to what I've actually experienced. And I did experience estrangement and then reconciliation, so.
I want to tell you a story. It's about a boy who lived in a pub, and his mother ran the bar. And he was always being sent away to his granny's for months on end, you know, just so his mother could get rid of him.
Shut your fucking mouth! You just shut your fucking mouth! I'll do for you! I will do for you!
What I'd like to do now is lay out a loop of sea and seagull.
And he met a girl, and he never knew how good it could be to be wanted by somebody.
Shut it, you fucking woman! You know what I'm fucking saying?
I want you to provide me with subgroups which then go through there and then down to tape so that we can start to put a package of sounds together, all of which are gated when that comes up, so that every time you see that image, like there's the sea noise and the seagulls and various other things.
Okay.
And what you see, what's interesting is when you do modify the sound and you don't hear him effing and blinding and swearing and cussing, an amazing amount of the impact of that scene is lost. Because then you don't actually hear his anger, you just see it, and it's not quite so bad. You know, you don't hear it. Fucking woman, it's fucking woman.
Although there is still the visual violence. I mean, they have someone tearing, and at the beginning you're not sure whether he's going to smash her face in.
Got the crash come through the wall, yeah? Jim is a failure who is able to still stand tall and say, OK, I'm a failure, but it doesn't make me any less of a human being. His anger should have been directed perhaps at his parents, and instead it's directed at his loved one. That he feels is a failure. Can I hear it through Dolby? I'd like it to be something which people could enjoy many, many times, and that it would grow with them over a period of time. If White City came close to that, I would be greatly pleased. How do I get it in the right key? I think I've always been fairly dilettantish in my enthusiasms. I think I'll always come back to music. I'll always come back to if I work in film, if I work as a writer, if I work as an editor. One of the things that I love about all those areas is the enthusiasm that's involved in that, because that is what music has allowed me to convey and to have reciprocated, is enthusiasm, a shared and an abandoned enthusiasm. Maybe only play that on the Hammond and play that one straight. I might as well just play a second note. I prefer it.